So I wanted to make a quick video on how to set up MongoDB using Google Compute Engine. Some of you indicated that you wanted to use MongoDB as opposed to Firebase or some of the other solutions. If you recall, as part of our professional practice number 2 assignment, we do have to deploy to App Engine and we do have to use the Google Cloud Platform because our company bank has a contract with GCP. And so all the billing and everything is set up for us to easily use it. And so that's the decision that was made by management. Of course, there are options for Firebase, the Google Cloud SQL environment where you could use both Postgres as well as MySQL, Cloud Firestore, and then MongoDB would have to be used within a Compute Engine instance. And so what I want to do is just have a quick walkthrough of how we would set MongoDB up in a Compute Engine instance. So here at our Google Cloud Platform dashboard, I'll select the project that I'm using for this assignment. And I'll go over to Compute Engine, look at all the virtual machines that I have installed. And since I don't have any installed, I'll go ahead and create one. Now at this screen, I can actually give my virtual machine a name. I'm just going to call it MongoDB test. I don't need any labels. I'll go ahead and use the defaults in terms of the region and the zone. The type of machine or the machine configuration will be important. I mean, if I was really going to use this for some serious purpose, but here I am not, so I can actually come and select an E2 small unit. It would cost me about $12.63 monthly to maintain this. As I continue to scroll to see other options, I can see what I want installed on my boot disk in terms of operating system. What I'm going to choose here is not the default Debian version, but I'm going to choose Ubuntu. And let's go with the latest version 20, or at least the latest long-term version number 20. And all I need is a standard persistent disk, and 10 gigabytes is more than enough. Most of the other options are okay by default. I will allow both HTTP and HTTPS traffic to this server, even though that won't necessarily affect my MongoDB instance that I'm going to set up initially. The other options that I can choose is to set up an SSH key so that I can easily access the server from my local machine. So I will add my SSH key by running this command, pbcopy, which is a clipboard manager on my Mac machine here. And I will pipe this command to basically read from this file where my SSH public key is located here. Now that I have that on my clipboard, I'll come here and paste it, create this instance. The instance may take a couple minutes to set up. So in the meantime, one of the other things that I will be required to do is basically set up a firewall rule to allow traffic to access this machine using the MongoDB standard port or whatever port that I choose. So I'm going to come here to my local terminal and type in that command as you see, and I'm going to connect basically to that server. Yes, I will save it. And so I'm connected to this MongoDB 20.04 instance. Again, that's the same instance that I just set up in the Google Cloud Console. So now my next step is to install MongoDB. And so there's lots of resources online, particularly from MongoDB, that shows you exactly how to do so. What I'm going to do is just follow these set of steps for installing MongoDB on Ubuntu 20.04. And since this is MongoDB, I'm going to trust that every command that I copy is okay. Okay, my next step now is I can run this Mongo command to connect to my local instance, and I can run a command show DBs to show the local DBs that are running. Control D gets me out of there. But in order for me to have this system working over the internet using Google Compute Engine, where me and my colleagues can connect to, then I want to basically enable authentication on this service. And so if I want to enable access control, there's another page on the MongoDB documentation that shows me how to do so. Basically, it instructs me to connect to my local instance. I can specify the port if I need to, but I'm using the default port, so it doesn't matter. So I can run the Mongo command, and then I can issue these commands to use the admin database, and then create a user in that database, and use that user basically to read and to write to any database in the system, and to create other users as needed. I'm going to run Mongo again. I'm going to use admin. And since I already had this command copied, actually there appears to be a typo in my command there. And since there is a typo, I need to fix that. Let's see where exactly it is. Database, admin, any database. And so let me fix that typo, reissue the command, retype my password. And now, yes, the user has successfully been added. The other thing that I'll need to do is edit the MongoDB configuration file to make sure that this security authorization key is enabled. And so I can copy that command and then come exit there. And then of course I know that this particular configuration file is at, I want to say sudo vim, or you could say sudo nano if you're not familiar with vim to edit the file. But I'm going to say sudo vim etc mongodb.conf. I find this line where this security line is, and I'm going to uncomment that line, and I'm actually going to add authorization enabled. Now, the other thing that I have to do while I'm here is that MongoDB is set up to, of course, listen on port 27017, but this bind IP key says that I'm only going to allow access to this MongoDB instance from this IP or any number of IPs that you list here. And so again, what I'm going to do that I wouldn't do in a typical production deployment, I'm just going to put all zeros here that basically says, hey, here's every I'm going to allow requests from any IP address. Once I've done that, I will escape, write that file, and then issue a command to restart the MongoDB instance. So sudo system control restart MongoDB. I'll check the status to make sure I didn't type anything wrong and there was a failure starting Mongo. And so it is active and running. And so now I can actually connect to the MongoDB instance from elsewhere. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm running a client provided by MongoDB called MongoDB Compass. And I'm going to now try to connect to that remote instance where MongoDB is running. And so I'm going to set up a new connection. I'll fill in these connection details. I'll copy and paste the IP address. Again, I want to use the default Mongo port. I'm going to use username password authentication because I did set up the user. That user was Byron. The password was here. Let me type as follows. And then the authentication database is admin. And so now if I connect and I set up everything correctly, I should now have access to that remote database. And again, now I can use that remote database as a staging database as well as a production database for the assignment, the professional practice assignment, if I choose to use MongoDB. Thank you.